Okay, everyone, this episode is called Faceless Men. Now, that's who killed the goldcloaks. We don't see the Faceless Men of Braavos who trained up Arya Stark to be an assassin who eventually kills the Night King, but we wouldn't recognize a Faceless Man if we saw one. Now, Prince Daemon in this episode confronts an individual who claims responsibility for the dead goldcloaks on behalf of the people of the Seven Kingdoms, he says. They hate Queen Rhaenyra because she's a woman. Simple misogyny. However, this is how the goldcloaks were killed in last week's episode. A professional hit, it looks like. The Faceless Men of Braavos could do it, and why such a gruesome tableau, which seems satanic? Now, this individual tells Daemon, "We have no sign or sigil, and when you strike us, you only drive more to our cause. You can burn us. You can kill us. You will never make us embrace her." Daemon kills him right after he says that, and I was like, yes, thank you. Thank you for killing that moron. So the title of this episode, Faceless Men, has two meanings. Now, the man who just got killed in episode 4 had sent a raven to Ormund Hightower talking about an account that lies open. Now, that must be the payment to the Faceless Men of Braavos. They're assassins. It would seem impossible for anyone who hadn't trained at the House of Black and White, like Arya Stark, to do a job like that. Now, back to the moron for the second meaning of Faceless Men. He was faceless in terms of being anonymous and a man, but not one of the Faceless Men of Braavos who trained at the House of Black and White. He was probably just a flunky for Ormund Hightower. Now, he says he speaks for many, and maybe he does, but it seems to me that his simple misogyny became a tool used by a much greater evil. Now, further revelations. I could be reading too much into this, but it seems to me that Ormund Hightower is a flunky as well. Now, I'm sensing there's a greater evil yet to be revealed on this show. Now, in this episode, Ormund comes off as a victim. He refers to Rhaenyra using the C word a bunch of times. Then he says she wouldn't dare send her dragons to burn Tumbleton. She's a woman. She's too squeamish. And yet he's nearly assassinated by Rhaenyra in this episode, and he barfs up his dinner after the assassination attempt, which shows us how squeamish Ormund is. Now, Rhaenyra is aware that Ormund is weak. She sends assassins right to his doorstep at Tumbleton disguised as a delegation from House Baratheon. Now, Gwaine goes full Team Hightower this episode. He foils Rhaenyra's assassination attempt on Ormond and Daeron. Now, the show establishes in this episode that Daeron and Gwaine are united against Ormond. Daeron and Gwaine both hate Ormond, but Daeron didn't know it was a fake delegation. He was as surprised as Ormond that it turned out to be an assassination attempt. Now, Gwaine knows Sir Aerion Baratheon, and he's not the individual who showed up at Tumbleton claiming to be him. So Gwaine suddenly begins cutting down the fake delegation. Daeron didn't know why Gwaine was suddenly attacking Baratheons. They seem to be Baratheons, but he stopped Sir John Roxton from intervening against Gwaine. Now, earlier in the episode, Daeron tells Gwaine, "I will never be king, uncle. We both know it." Then he mentions strange things about Ormond. He says to Gwaine, "I do what I can to keep him from, you know." What is that, barfing? In any event, we'll find out what it is later. Now, Daeron also says, "Who will protect me then? Will you raise up an army against his savages?" Savages. Maybe Daeron is referring to the children of the forest. Now, in Game of Thrones, they created the first White Walker, the Night King, with a shard of dragon glass. And in Game of Thrones, we watched the Night King reanimate one of Daenerys Targaryen's dragons. So, Sunfire is dead, but that could be temporary. And I mentioned a greater evil. Now, by the end of this series, Aegon could emerge as a vessel for the greater evil. Attacking women at this point in the timeline threatens all of humanity because that's the ultimate goal of the greater evil. That's what the Night King was ultimately seeking, let's recall. Next, death of Criston Cole, aka Sir Lancelot, the greatest warrior in the realm, and he fought like it this episode. Now, his Guinevere was too damaged to break free of the games they play at King's Landing. She should have just run off with him, especially after getting pregnant. At his death, Cole took out the handkerchief given him by Alicent and wrapped it around his sword hilt. Then he was shot full of arrows and died. No redemption for Cole, unlike Lancelot, and I blame Alicent. Now, this is a point in the timeline when Rhaenyra is raising up bastards to be dragon lords. She smashed the status quo and rose along with them to become queen. See how that works? But Alicent is trapped in the status quo and refuses to break free. Maybe her heart died with Cole on the battlefield. Now, she and Helaena are discovered in the tunnel from last episode and brought before Rhaenyra. Alicent tells her Helena's pregnant, so they were trying to escape. Rhaenyra says, "The people think you're my enemy, but I would never hurt you." Now, later, Mysaria lies and tells Rhaenyra she didn't know Helaena was pregnant. Then Mysaria has a witness killed. But Alicent and Helaena are also witnesses. Will Mysaria kill them as well? In this episode, Helaena also questions Alicent about why she had to marry her own brother. Fair question? Alicent says she wanted to keep Helaena close and that it was Otto Hightower's idea, but Alicent went along with it. And this underscores for us that Alicent should have run off with Cole and quit playing the Game of Thrones a long time ago. Now, Rhaena watches Sheepstealer flying around with Moondancer. Later, Rhaena is brought before Lady Jeyne Arryn right after she has someone thrown out the moon door. Now, Lady Jeyne slaps Rhaena this episode because Rhaena left the cave and went out to look at Moondancer, hoping to see her sister Baela. Now, if Rhaena had been seen, it could have brought the Queen's wrath on Lady Jeyne and the Vale for harboring a fugitive. And Lady Jeyne is playing the Game of Thrones, establishing control over Rhaena. "I'm risking my own life to shelter you. The next time you try me, it will be the last," she says. Now, speaking of slapping dragon riders, Prince Daemon slaps Ulf the White. He falls to the ground. But I won't say Ulf has my sympathy here. He had snuck out of the Red Keep and when confronted by Daemon, complains about his duties at Tumbleton. He says, "Men need their simple pleasures. You should know that," he says. That's a dig at Rhaenyra. Daemon slaps him to the ground to say in so many words, "Your boss is the queen and you'd best not forget." Now, Hugh Hammer, meanwhile, steals a wagon and goes to Tumbleton. He's inside the city walls and finds his wife, Cat. She thought he was dead after he went to Dragonstone to try to claim a dragon. He tells her, "I did it, I'm a dragon lord." She's upset with him, though. She says, "Do you know what may befall a woman alone on the road from King's Landing to Tumbleton? Many things." He wants to get her out of Tumbleton, but she's really angry with him and says, "You claimed a dragon for yourself, to raise yourself up. It had nothing to do with me." She refuses to go with him. Now, Corlys and the Velaryon troops have been executing Triarchy forces. Alyn finds him and says Rhaenyra needs Velaryon troops to protect King's Landing. The goldcloaks have all been resigning. Now, Corlys says Rhaenyra's needs are endless, but she won't legitimize Alyn. And Alyn responds, "And how many years did it take you to do the same?" Corlys is stung by that. He says to tell Rhaenyra he found out Tywin Lannister survived the gullet and went to Rook's Rest. Also, Corlys decides to go back to King's Landing, but he's kidnapped by Ormond in this episode. Aemond, One Eye, and Alys Rivers have decided to build a future together. Alys reveals she has a clutch of 6 dragon eggs. One of them is warm. Now, Vhagar has left Harrenhal, abandoned Aemond, and he was about to go find Vhagar, but Alys Rivers says she probably left to protect you because Rhaenyra is looking for you. She wouldn't think to look for you apart from Vhagar. Now, Helaena has a vision of that Vhagar has left Aemond. She tells Alicent, and Alicent tells Rhaenyra that Helaena is a dreamer. Her dreams come to pass. Rhaenyra wants to use that skill, and she sends Alicent on an errand to Harrenhal. She's to lure Aemond out where Rhaenyra's soldiers can kill him. And to conclude this episode, Baela makes her move on Alyn. Now, it was just last week that Addam had declared his feelings for Baela. I don't know why she chose Alyn over Addam, but both men are putty in her hands in any event. I hope she doesn't turn into Alicent, who had told Mysaria last week, "Do you really want to pin your hopes on a dragon rider?" meaning Rhaenyra. So if Baela is turning into Alicent, she'd be going in a very different direction than her own mom, Lhaena, who expected to die the death of a dragon rider, glorious in battle. But dragon lords don't always die in battle, and you could die in a palace far away from dragons if you happen to run into Prince Daemon, for example. Valar Morghulis, as they say. And sometimes you get to say, "Not today." Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe.